Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots, and we're joined by our Cincinnati Bengals insider, Charlie Goldsmith. First of all, Charlie, I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and continue to have a good holiday so far. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Look, the Bengals came away with a win. They're now 6-10 on the season. We even got a smile out of Joe Burrow after the 37-14 win. Cincinnati Bengals seem to be able to rack up points at will. They seem to be able to score on just about every single possession when Joe Burrow is playing quarterback for this football team. I think I have it by all accounts. This is their 8th game this season where they've scored 30 or more points. They're now 5-3 in those 8 games. So this offense is on a tear, gaining over 400 yards total offense in back-to-back games.
This is as good as it's ever looked. And to me, it's a product of all these, or most of these guys have been in the scheme for so long. And, it's another full year for Chase Brown. It's another full year for Mike Gesicki. I look at the fact that this is one of the best offensive lines that Joe Burrow has ever played behind the ascension of Amarius Mims. I think the coaching staff has done a very nice job offensively with this scheme. And you put it all together, and it's an offense that's in, best in the league status or pretty close.
Yeah, and I want to get into the offensive line a little bit later. I'm going to ask you a couple of things about Amarius Mims, but I want to start with just a couple of things that I noticed, and I don't know if you had a chance to talk to the head coach, Zac Taylor, about this. Joe Burrow being under center a little bit more than what we've ever seen in the past. I think it's lent itself to an improvement in the run game. I think it's helped Chase Brown in the run game. It's helped the offensive line and pass protection because now play action is more part of it. And then to go more 12 personnel, you know what 12 personnel is? It's one running back, 2 tight ends to help with protection, to help with the run game. So that personnel grouping against Arizona proved to be so much more effective. What are you hearing from Zac Taylor with that usage?
I'll one up you. How about 21 personnel? 2 running backs on the field at the same time between Joe Burrow's NFL debut and week 12 of this season, the Patriots game. The Bengals had 2 running backs on the field 20 total times in 5.5 years. Since week 12, they've had 2 running backs on the field 22 total times, including Jamar Chase's second touchdown yesterday, including 3 plays in the game, including 2 touchdowns in Miami. It's been working, and they've had new wrinkles, and kind of the bigger wrinkle on Sunday specifically was not just 12, but jumbo 12 with Cody Ford. And you might have heard he had a nice little catch.
Yeah, he did. I might as well go right into that, because in a season that I don't want to say is lost, but I think for a lot of fans, it had been a lost season until the return of Joe Burrow. And I think it reinvigorated the entire franchise. I think it reinvigorated not only the players, but the coaching staff. And then I love the fact that Zac Taylor knows how to make these games meaningful, to design a play where one of your offensive linemen is out in the pass. He's one of your 5 eligible players in the passing route. And not only does he make a catch, he makes guys miss. He's tiptoeing down the sideline. He gets down to the 2-yard line. He nearly scored a touchdown. And the excitement and enthusiasm on the sideline when Cody Ford returned to the sideline, he's high-fiving over there with Zac Taylor. In some way, shape, or form, this has turned out to be so much more fun for their final games when a team is not even in the playoffs. They seem to be enjoying themselves. What more can you tell us?
Bengals offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher, I think, truly is a genius schemer and a schematic coach. And he's always able to dial stuff up for Jamar and T, and they proved again on Sunday, like the Cardinals weren't stopping the Bengals no matter who they were throwing the ball.
That's right.
What the Bengals never do is trick plays. I bet if you made a list, they'd be last on that list. Most trick plays in the league, outside of an old-fashioned flea flicker to it's not something they do. And the line I've always used and heard is Joe Burrow is the trick play. Why mess with it? But Dan Pitcher said he learned something yesterday. He was reminded that there is a fun factor when you do something like get a 21-yard gain to Cody Ford. And there's this second piece of value in the play. pitcher was talking about, which is the intangible value, the excitement, the buzz, the energy. Like that's not going to show up on any spreadsheet or any offensive analytics or anything like that. But does a Cody Ford catch for 21 yards put more juice in a team than a Jamar Chase catch for 21 yards? Probably. And there's something to be learned from that.
It really is. I think sometimes in the grind, remember Joe Burrow said it himself. Hey, this has got to be fun. You hear other players echoing the same thing. I think you heard Matthew Stafford say that when he ended up leaving Detroit, ended up going to the Rams and winning the Super Bowl. I mean, for these players, they invest a lot of their time, a lot of their energy into their jobs, and they want to be able to enjoy again. It's nice to see that this team, despite their record, still finding a way to make these games meaningful and enjoying them as well. I want to share something with you because I think these numbers are it tells us something about Joe Burrow, right? It really informs us. Joe Burrow has now become only the third quarterback through at least 25 games or with 25 games of 300 yards passing and multiple touchdown passes in those games in his first 6 seasons. He's joined Pat Mahomes and Dan Marino in that group. They're the only 3 guys to do it in those first 6 seasons. I just think it's simply incredible that with that many games of that kind of production through the first 6 seasons, what does that tell you about Joe Burrow? What does it tell you that he now has 28 games with 300 yards passing? He's tied Andy Dalton, who has the franchise record, and Andy played for 9 seasons, and Joe's only in his 6th season, and even with many games having been missed due to injury, that he's able to accomplish so much with so little time on the field.
The latest game against the Cardinals was interesting because they were very undermanned, but truly like it was one of the harder to predict schemes from what the Bengals have seen in a while. Like, all right, the Cardinals, are they going to blitz this way? Are they going to blitz that way? It's a pretty exotic scheme as a whole, but their best blitzer was hurt. Were they going to make the Bengals beat them down the field because they didn't have as much of their usual guys in the secondary? Were they going to try to give their safeties more help because they were undermanned in the secondary? Like, who knew what the Cardinals were going to do against the Bengals yesterday heading into that game? And Burrow clearly figured it out very, very quickly. And his ability on the first drive, the second drive to figure out, it's going to be this type of game today. It's going to be this type of game today. It's going to be this type of game today. He has seen it all and he can recognize it all with the snap of a fingers. And Sunday was the latest example of a long list of games that he has just figured out.
Yeah, it's like he's cracked the code, so to speak. And once he cracks that code, forget about trying to stop him. I have him scoring on 6 of their first 7 possessions in the game, 5 touchdowns, 1 field goal. Before midway through the third quarter, they just called off the dogs and took him out of the game because he was operating at such a level. It got to the point, I guess, where they felt like, okay, we've seen enough, and they put Joe Flacco in the game. I want to turn our attention to Chase Brown because he's been phenomenal. I think he's been exceptional. We've seen tremendous improvement from him. And then I also want you to touch on the return of Samaje Perine. You talked about the 21 personnel, 2 running backs. He was able to pick up one of the blitzers coming in, and I thought it was a wonderful blitz pickup on a significant play to Jamar Chase. I think that was the one where it went for a touchdown. Jamar had 2 touchdowns in this game. But the pairing of these two, the young and the more elder statesman, but there's nothing on the football field that you would want a running back to do that Samaje Perine can't do, whether it's blocking, whether it's running, whether it's catching the ball out of the backfield. He can do everything. He's like the utility man. And then the juice that you get from Chase Brown is exceptional. What are your thoughts about those two specifically and how they fit in what this offense is doing right now?
Well, what's funny is, they fall into your perfect, thunder and lightning archetypes, but I think the things that they each don't get enough credit for is what the other guy does. Like, I think Chase Brown's pretty good in protection, and he could be a very good third down back if that's how the Bengals felt like they needed to use him. And he's excellent on checkdowns. And I think Brown is really underrated when he needs to be a bruiser and a bell cow and a 4-minute back and a short yardage guy. And then Perine, those are all the things we usually say about Perine, but he's proven himself to be really valuable just as it's been sporadic, but like put him in on first down and he'll make a play. He'll run over guys. He'll go outside the numbers. He has a wide variety of runs that he can make an impact with. He's just consistently been a positive presence in the passing game throughout the whole of Joe Burrow's career. That's even just as a pass catcher, let alone the fact that he's one of the best pass protectors in the league. So I think Perine's kind of not as good as Brown, but a bit of a do-it-all back himself. So that creates a lot of fun possibilities for the Bengals coaches.
Brown just has the speed and the electricity, that energy, the quickness that most defenses can't match up with. What is Zach Taylor saying about the defensive coordinator, Al Golden? We're seeing improvements with the defense. They still are giving up a league-high 30 points a game. Yeah, they're giving up, 400 yards per game. We know that. But I'm seeing some marked improvement with their ability to get off the field, the timely turnovers, and younger players becoming more consistent, I guess is the best way to put it. I know the numbers don't look spectacular, but it looks like they're getting off the field. They're getting stops. They're getting turnovers. And then we're seeing young players like whether it's Dax Hill, certainly DJ Turner, but even Miles Murphy. And we even saw was it the first sack by Shamar Stewart of his career? So we're starting to see some improvement with some of these young guys on the defense. What are you hearing?
They'll need more help on the whole on the roster heading into 2026. But I truly Bleav that all of the young guys got better over the course of the year. I think a perfect example is, you look at a guy like Miles Murphy, who now securely a starting defensive end in the NFL. The guy in DJ Turner who went from a bench guy to a Pro Bowl candidate. Dax Hill, who started the season saying, what position is he going to play? To now being one of the better young corners on the outside in all the NFL. Jordan Battle solidified his spot in the starting lineup heading into next year. And then while it's been rocky for sure for Barrett Carter and for Demetrius Knight, and then when he's been out there, Shamar Stewart, they are better players than they were. They're executing the scheme better. They're playing with more confidence. They look like they know what they're doing more within the scheme than they were in October. And that is a sign to me that there's an ecosystem of positive progress going on, even if they're just a bit, undermanned at a few positions.
Now, as for the offensive line, last I checked, they've given up, 34 sacks this season. You and I both know that's a tremendously low number. Not just for the Bengals offensive line, but for any offensive line. Through these 16 games, that would equate to about 2 sacks per game, which you and I both know is the volume, the sheer volume of our passing attack. We've seen much higher numbers in years past. I would argue that this is probably the best offensive line best offensive line play since Joe Burrow joined the team in 2020. And Marius Mims, we all thought he had the talent. We thought he was a freak of nature guy at the right tackle position. But boy, now he's playing like it. He's not being overwhelmed. He seems to know what to expect, and he's playing rather well. What are you hearing about this offensive line? What do you see in this offensive line?
Well, let's make sure, we highlight Mims for being one of the best young tackles in the NFL. You can just see it on film. They don't give him help. They trust him to win one-on-one. It's like DJ Turner. They think DJ Turner is going to win one-on-one against his guy. They think Amarius Mims is going to win one-on-one against his guy. And for a guy who obviously had limited game experience in college, he has come into his own very, very quickly in the NFL, and there's still room to improve. There's still a high ceiling there. You look at Dylan Fairchild being a successful pick, Dalton Reisner kind of coming out of nowhere as a free agent who ended up solidifying the right guard position for the Bengals. And, we always talk about the Bengals offensive line every year. Well, this year they just squarely succeeded in building this unit.
Hello, everyone. Look, 2026 is here, and one of my most important goals in the new year is to maintain my mental health. And what do? Look, I go for a 1-hour walk every single day as my way of getting out, getting some fresh air, and continuing to take care of my mind as well as my body. And you can't hire anyone to do that. You're going to have to do that for yourself. But We know it's hard to find people if you do want to hire someone. And so, look, if you got to do it, then I can tell you a way and where you can go to get that done. It's like if you're hiring, how can you find the best people for all of the different roles on your team? Well, it's easy. It's called ZipRecruiter. And right now, you can try it for free. All you have to do is just go to ziprecruiter.com/audio. And if you're looking to hire help, well, you can find out right away how many job seekers are in your area and who are qualified for your roles. No wonder ZipRecruiter is number one in terms of their rating for a hiring site based on G2. Look, let ZipRecruiter help you find the best people for all of your roles. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself and just go to the exclusive web address right now to try ZipRecruiter for free. ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter. It's the smartest way to hire. Well, I don't know if this had anything to do with their marked improvement, but Joe Burrow spent rather lavishly. He played the perfect Santa Claus for his offensive lineman. As you well know, and maybe our viewers don't know, typically going back not just to the days of Boomer Esiason here, who really, he used to get the offensive lineman cowboy boots, right? He would get a cowboy hat one year. But man, it seems like the splurge has become much larger. But I never thought dinosaur fossils would be on the Christmas list. And that's exactly what Joe Burrow got for his offensive lineman as a Christmas gift this year. What are you hearing amongst the offensive linemen? Do they even process or understand the erudite mind that is Joe Burrow? He's an eccentric erudite. He's a highly educated individual, there's no doubt, and thinks differently at a much higher level. So this is really sort of a term of endearment with this purchase, isn't it?
The first thing I heard about the gift was that it was better than the swords that Burrow got the linemen last year. And I said, that can't be true. But then I found out it was these fossils, and I was like, it's even more personal because we know, right, personally how much Burrow loves fossils. Now, I don't know if he's a big sword. I assume he's not a big swords guy, but we know he's a big fossils guy. So the fact that it meant something to Joe, I think helped it mean a little extra something to these linemen who also get something very cool to display for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think someone said that next quarterbacks are going to be buying houses for their offensive linemen. Everybody's going to live on my block. Offensive linemen, they stick together. Maybe they want to live together. They could have their own commune one day. But I do think it was a wonderful gift by Joe Burrow. Very thoughtful and certainly very generous as well. I want to ask you about maybe some of the young players that you think there's going to be a real topic of conversation this offseason about. They're facing maybe contract decisions. Will the team look to okay? And you and I both know on the defensive side, I think it's really important. But a guy like Chase Brown, who's wrapping up his 3rd year, he'll be due a new contract. There's some other guys. Who are the guys that you think we're going to be talking a lot in this way or in this conversation about potentially getting a new contract this offseason ahead of 2026?
Well, don't look now because, very quickly the Bengals went from a team where, we can still talk about this, but the fact that they hadn't been drafting well enough to the fact that this 2023 draft class looks pretty exciting. And that whole class is now eligible for contract extensions. Mm-hmm. And that whole class is filled with a bunch of guys several guys who should be starters for the Bengals going forward. I think you start with what you hope and expect to now be the strength of your defense, which is DJ Turner and then 2022 first-round pick Dax Hill. Dax, because they picked up his 5th-year option, is basically in the pool with those 2023 guys with one more year of team control before hitting free agency. So Dax and DJ, extend them and solidify them as a duo to really build around at corner. And then Chase Brown, we've, sung his praises plenty this as we record this today. And he's a guy who can expect to make pretty decent salary when you look at the running back market and you look at how well Chase Brown's played. So you look at those guys in particular, and then Myles Murphy would be under contract for one further season as a first-round pick, but he's a guy certainly that you want to start thinking about the future of.
Absolutely. Those guys, I think, are going to be top of mind for the Cincinnati Bengals this offseason, getting some business done and pretty much taking care of their own. It'll also be interesting to see if they go shopping on the free agent market at other positions, because there's going to be, they need to improve in several areas on this football team moving forward if they're going to compete not only for the AFC North Division title, but to go to a Super Bowl. And I would think that would be the ultimate goal, considering you have a quarterback that is named Joe Burrow. I want to look ahead to the regular season finale. Cleveland Browns are coming to town, Charlie, and they have this not so secret weapon, right? This guy is operating like a drone, okay? And that is Myles Garrett, who needs one sack to set the new single season sack record and pass TJ Watt and Michael Strahan and collect his 23rd sack this season, which will give him the record. What are the Bengals saying about how they're going to play football on offense, even though they'll have to try to block an unblockable Myles Garrett?
Well, you look at the tape and you see a Bengals team that's mindful of Myles on every play. And do I remember this right, that he had like 2 or 3 sacks on consecutive plays against the Bengals in week 1 when these teams played? I think they've got no answer for Myles. It's just how you adjust and live off of that. Now, they've had success against Cleveland's defense in the past. A lot of those times they've been able to get out to a lead and have a balanced overall offense, and the game script ends up playing a factor in kind of how you're able to operate your offense, and that's been very helpful for them in those games. I think of at home in 2024. I think of on the road in 2024. I think of at home in 2023. They've shown they can do it. I guess home in 2022 actually is what I was thinking of. They've shown that they can do it, but they have to be playing a good game to be able to keep it safe.
You know what stands out to me? This is that real true test to see just how much the offensive line has improved. And what I mean more importantly is the ability to run the ball. Can you run the ball on the Cleveland Browns? Because I think if you put Joe Burrow under center and you start with the run game and now you work play action off of it, you're going to find that if our offensive line can manage, it really helps if you put the quarterback under center. It helps the offensive line if you're using the run game, because now you're really firing off on a Myles Garrett. You're firing off on a Mason Graham, right? Carson Schlesinger, their Mike linebacker, he's a rookie, but very good. They have a really robust defensive front, and you and I both know they're very good on the back end on their secondary. We've found it really tough to be very successful on a down in, down out basis against the Cleveland Browns defense over the last several years since Myles Garrett has been on this team. Jim Schwartz is one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. And you saw what they just did to Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, upset their playoff party. The Pittsburgh Steelers are now 1-6-1. They've only won once in their last 8 games in Cleveland. And so they were upset against this team. They couldn't even score in the second half of the game. And so I think the work is cut out for the Cincinnati Bengals, particularly for the offensive line. I want to see how well they carry themselves against the Cleveland Browns defensive front in the regular season finale, because I think that's going to tell us how far they really have come.
And it's a game, too, where the Bengals defense needs to be opportunistic and force turnovers against the Browns offense that, they've dealt with a lot of injuries. There's been a ton of inconsistency, and while Shedeur Sanders has provided a spark, there's not much support and help around him, which has left Cleveland's offense vulnerable, even, in a game they won on Sunday against Pittsburgh. So it's a game where the Bengals as a whole, as a team, have to kind of get out to a quick, fast start. Then that makes everybody's lives easier, especially when you're facing a team that's in last place.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is one of those games. You don't want Myles Garrett performing and getting the elation of setting a new single-season sack record at Paycor Stadium in front of Cincinnati Bengals fans and standing over Joe Burrow in that way. One last question before we get you out of here. What matters most in this final week of what really has been a disappointing season? I know they're trying to end it on a good note. I'm feeling good about this team as I sit here right now. They're 6-10. You and I both know that's not what we all sort of signed up for. It's not what we had expected. But I do like the morale. I like the mindset. I like the leadership of Zach Taylor and how he keeps the players engaged and wanting to play football for this city and for this organization. So what comes to mind? What matters most at this point for the Bengals players, for the organization heading into the final week?
Let's see a couple more splash plays, especially on the defense. Can Shamar get one more sack and kind of show that gear continuing to develop? Can Jordan Battle, does he have another turnover where he shows that gear in his game? Yeah. Can Chase Brown hit 1,000 yards and really put that stamp on his 2025 season? Up and down the roster, they've all got something that, you kind of want to end that momentum with to really solidify everything they've put on tape and shown in 2025.
And next week, when we wrap it all up, right here on the Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel, I'm going to ask Charlie Goldsmith to give us his highlights of the season. He's going to give us a top 10 list of the top 10 most significant moments to the season. And it'll be his personal list because it'll be, a new year. We'll be looking back on the year that was. Of course, the Bengals didn't make the playoffs for the third straight season, but there's still something to celebrate. And so we're going to do that during next week's episode of the Bleav in Bengal podcast right here on Bleav in Bengals presented by FanDuel. We want to thank you for joining us, everyone. Don't forget to join us next time.